I'm delighted that we're going to be joined in this session by His Excellency Paul Johnston, the Ambassador of the United Kingdom to Ireland, but we're unfortunately not going to be joined by the Ambassador in person. He tested positive for COVID, I think, yesterday, but was very committed to being part of the conference today and is going to join us, hopefully, online in just a moment or two. On stage, you'll also see Professor John Doyle. John, thanks for joining us on stage. John is going to hopefully moderate a Q&A session with the Ambassador after the Ambassador stops speaking. John's a professor, which means that he will be able to work out how to do all of this, even if it's remote, one way or another, because that's what professors do. They find answers to things that us mere mortals wouldn't have an answer to. So I'm hoping the Ambassador is able to join us on screen. We've just lost him. Okay, well, I will continue my introduction and hopefully we'll find him before I finish. If not... Okay, well, let me introduce him if he hasn't got back to us by then. That's a better option than John and I doing a song and dance on screen together, which was the other. That's Plan C, John. I don't know if you knew that. Hopefully we'll be joined by the Ambassador, His Excellency Paul Johnston. Paul, as you know from the bio in the conference brochure, has spent a great deal of time in different parts of the world, including, I noticed, in the Balkans as well as in Brussels. So if there's anybody who can talk to us, not just from a perspective of being the UK representative in Ireland at the moment, but also from the perspective of regions like the Northern Ireland that have recently come out of conflict and are trying to build a peace, then no better person than Paul Johnston, as well as talking about the challenges of Brexit from an EU perspective, I suppose, as well as a UK perspective. There's no sign of him yet, so I think what we will probably do is go to the Plan B rather than Plan C. Let's see the interview that he's already given, and if he joins us meantime, then we can get out of that and go back to him live.
Hello everyone. If you're seeing my face now on the screen, that means we have gone to Plan B in terms of the keynote address by the Ambassador Paul Johnston, British Ambassador to Ireland, who has very kindly agreed to do this pre-record despite the fact that obviously he's not with us today in terms of the in-person element of this 23rd annual conference of the Centre for Cross-Border Studies for obvious reasons, because he has tested positive for COVID, unfortunately. But I'm really, really grateful to the Ambassador for agreeing to do this pre-record. As I said, this is Plan B, and I'm very sorry to everyone for having to intervene in this way and for you to having to see my face. But without any further ado, I am going to hand over to Britain's Ambassador to Ireland, Paul Johnston. Thank you, Paul. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Anthony, and good afternoon, everyone. And I'm really sorry not to be with you in person in Dundalk today, but to be broadcasting to you from the less than glamorous location of a spare bedroom in the residence in Dublin. But it's a great honour to be invited to address the conference. I've been really looking forward to it ever since Anthony invited me some months back. And with typically bad timing, I tested positive for COVID this morning, just a couple of days after my wife had. I don't really have any symptoms, but I am self-isolating nevertheless. But thanks to the wonders of modern technology, I can sort of be with you. Hopefully, as Anthony has said, we won't be using this video, but if we do end up using this video, then I'm afraid it's the best we can do in the circumstances. So let me just say, as I said, it's a great honour indeed. It's a privilege to be invited to make this address today. The Centre for Cross-Border Studies is an important and, I would say, candid friend to both the UK and Irish governments and to civil society in both countries more widely. You've been a consistent and a vital voice for progress and reconciliation on this island and our thanks go to you for the contributions you make, indeed, across these islands. And I would say it's a mark of the respect in which you're held that the Taoiseach is your other, in fact, your real keynote speaker tomorrow, today. This year's theme is a timely and important one, focusing on commitment, resilience and perseverance, ingredients that have never been more necessary and relevant than today. And I hope in my own small way I'm showing a little bit of resilience and perseverance by being able to do this talk. In it, I'd like to draw together some of these themes and speak generally about the importance of how we can harness those themes in our, i.e. Britain and Ireland's approach to the shared challenges and opportunities that we see as we navigate the next chapters in our complex and sensitive relationship. And I use the word shared deliberately because as governments, peoples, cultures, societies, we share so much. We share a difficult history, we share the fact of our geography, but we share a great deal more as well. As governments, of course, we have a deep shared interest in peace and stability in Northern Ireland, as our Secretary of State and Simon Coveney made clear at their meeting at Hillsborough this morning, stroke yesterday. Externally, we are in absolute lockstep in our commitment to supporting Ukraine and in our condemnation of Russia's actions, as the Prime Minister and the Taoiseach discussed when they met in Downing Street some 10 days ago. We've worked closely together on these and other issues during Ireland's membership of the UN Security Council. Bilaterally, we cooperate strongly on a range of areas: cyber, climate action, energy security. And of course, we've also been united in sadness in recent weeks. I'd like to offer my heartfelt thanks to all who have offered their thoughts, prayers and messages of condolences to the British Embassy and to His Majesty's government since the passing of Her late Majesty, the Queen. In this period of mourning, we've been reminded in a very moving fashion of the very special connection between the people of Ireland and the Queen, not least, of course, through her historic state visit to Dublin and Cork in 2011. At the British Embassy, over the course of a week or so, hundreds of members of the public came through our gates to sign our Book of Condolence. Many flowers were left at the gates. Echoing Her late Majesty's own words in that 2011 visit, these acts of kindness have shown that we're much more than neighbours, but firm friends, and we are enormously grateful to our friends for the outpouring of respect and affection and admiration that was shown at this time. Of course, not least in the setting of today's conference, it's important to remember two other particular people lost to us in recent times who also played a vital role in the relationship between UK and Ireland. I'm thinking, of course, of John Hume and Lord Trimble, joint Nobel Prize laureates for their essential role in the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. They, in their work, demonstrated the values that we're discussing here today in exemplary fashion. They led with commitment, resilience and perseverance to all our benefits. They showed great courage in the darkest of times, and I think we all have a responsibility to continue to work together in the spirit that they exemplified and indeed personified. So as we reflect on these sad passings, we should also recognise the distance that we've come in a positive sense as two countries in a relatively short number of years. And I think it's important that we use times like this and conferences like this to take forward the nurturing and the underpinning of our relationship, as the Taoiseach has frequently and rightly emphasised. Since the signing of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, we have seen 2.5 decades of peace and stability in Northern Ireland. This has not been without its challenges, as many of you in the room will know even better than me. And indeed, the Stormont institutions have not always functioned, as regrettably is the case at the moment. But overall, the change has been transformational. The Belfast Agreement ended decades of violence. It created a balance and a relationship which considers both north-south and east-west dimensions of equal importance and value. And most importantly, it underlined the principle of consent in any discussion of constitutional change. As we approach the 25th anniversary, I think it's an important time to recognise the huge achievement that the agreement represents and the key roles that our two governments have to play in upholding it. As we approach that quarter-century milestone, the Northern Ireland of today is undoubtedly enjoying the fruits of greater reconciliation. Last week's census results also demonstrated the diversity of identities, beliefs and traditions that comprise Northern Ireland's increasingly confident and pluralistic society, a fact that ought to be embraced as a strength, rather than perceived as a weakness. For our part, just as the UK government remains as committed as ever to the principle of consent that is fundamental to Northern Ireland's status, so too do we celebrate the emergence of this modern and diverse Northern Ireland within the Union. What is clear is that we owe it to the people of Northern Ireland to work together and to deliver on the issues that really matter, including the restoration of fully functioning, devolving institutions. This is an objective which unites our two governments, as the ministers made clear at their meeting. Looking ahead, we can see the scope and the desire for our relationship to continue to grow. Consider the current generation of 25-year-olds who've grown up in this new era, in a world where sectarian violence is not an everyday reality, thank God, and where there is peace and much improved political stability in Northern Ireland. We see the issues that matter to this generation: climate change, equality, economic opportunity, education. None of these issues can be tackled alone. Our cooperation across all three strands of the agreement is going to be essential. So just as it's important to reflect on the achievements of the past 25 years, we must also think and work together on these important issues as we look to the next 25 years. From resolving the issues with the Northern Ireland Protocol to the restoration of power sharing, the promotion of integrated education in Northern Ireland, the assault on deprivation, the encouragement of investment, there's a huge shared interest and shared agenda in making progress. All of these themes are dear to our new king, as he made clear in his visit to Northern Ireland 2 weeks ago, and I know of his deep affection for Northern Ireland and his strong commitment to the relationship between the two countries. Of course, there are immediate issues where we need to make particular progress, most notably on the Northern Ireland Protocol and on the legacy issue. Today is not the day for a detailed exposition of our position on the Northern Ireland Protocol, or as politicians often say in media interviews, I'm not going to offer a running commentary. A former colleague, reflecting on his long diplomatic service career, once said that he'd seen too much protocol, alcohol and vitriol. I won't offer a running commentary on that observation either. What I will say is that based on the conversations that the Prime Minister and our other ministers have had in recent weeks with Irish, other EU and US counterparts, I would confidently reiterate our commitment to finding a negotiated solution, if at all possible. As things stand, we know there are real practical and political problems with how the Northern Ireland Protocol is operating. There are issues that need to be addressed: trade disruption and diversion, significant costs and bureaucracy for traders. Additionally, those in Northern Ireland have not been able to benefit fully from the same advantages as those in the rest of the UK. There are tax and spend discrepancies between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK, which mean that businesses in Northern Ireland can't fully benefit from the same support and subsidies as firms in England, Wales and Scotland. We want an outcome overall which will reflect and restore the careful balances inherent in the Good Friday Agreement, an agreement whose promotion and protection is, after all, a key objective of the protocol. And we want to deliver a trading relationship where no one feels that their identity is threatened. One can be British or Irish, one can source goods with minimum fuss from both countries, from either country. We believe that that can be best delivered through a negotiation and, of course, a negotiated outcome. And we'll work tirelessly in the period ahead to deliver an outcome that works for the EU and the UK. And as you may have seen in the media, the Foreign Secretary is due to have a first contact with Vice President Šefčovič at the end of this week. On the legacy issue, as is well known, our approach to the legacy of the Troubles rests on our conviction that the current system for addressing the past is not working well for anyone, particularly victims and survivors. In our view, it's delivering neither justice nor adequate information to families. So our aim is to address the legacy of Northern Ireland's past by allowing those who've experienced trauma and tragedy to have an opportunity to find out what happened through the implementation of an effective information recovery and reconciliation process. This is vital to allow us to be able to move forwards together so that we can nurture and invest in the relationship between our two countries. We recognise the concerns, the strong concerns, that have been raised about our proposals from the government and others in Ireland and from parties and others in Northern Ireland. We would like to close those gaps and we remain open to dialogue to that end, as I'm sure our Minister would have made clear to the Irish Foreign Minister only yesterday. So there is no shortage of immediate issues to tackle, but we shouldn't only focus on the immediate. It's in looking to the future that we can see important long-term and strategic areas where we can and should be working together. On the world stage, as I mentioned, we stand together in defence of our shared values as open and democratic societies. A strong bilateral relationship is in all our interests, not least given the wider geostrategic challenges we face. Ireland is one of only a few countries named specifically in the UK's integrated review. That was our cross-government look at the big economic, political and security challenges Britain faces. That shows Ireland's particular value to the UK as a trusted international partner. Our closeness on the world stage has been apparent in our approach to Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. We've both been at the forefront of the international response, both supporting, advocating and implementing tough sanctions. The UK also with its contribution in military aid, similarly Ireland with its non-lethal but essential aid, and both countries welcoming Ukrainians in as we offer them safety in our own countries. We've worked together across the agenda on the UN Security Council, including tackling food insecurity, especially in the Horn of Africa, where Ireland has played a particularly important role. We've supported and applauded Ireland's efforts to secure a resolution on climate security, an issue which we and I personally helped bring to the Council first in 2007. As such, we deplored Russia's cynical veto of Ireland's draft resolution, which had commanded so much support within the Security Council and across the broader UN membership. The Taoiseach spoke powerfully, I thought, last week in New York about the outrageous behaviour of Moscow in the Council and beyond, which is a stain on the United Nations and the Charter, and his remarks ought to be listened to and acted upon, in my view. We also commend Ireland for their work and commitment to civil society engagement while in the Security Council, particularly their devotion to including the voices of women peace builders around the Security Council table. As someone who negotiated the establishment of the UN Peacebuilding Commission while the UK had the EU presidency in 2005, it's an issue close to my heart. Having also that year negotiated the first Security Council referral of a case to the International Criminal Court, I applaud Ireland's emphasis, again fully shared by the UK, on accountability for war crimes, not least in Ukraine. We're both committed to advancing our economic security and opportunity. The challenges posed in their different ways by Russia and China require new focus on this, in our view, which we will address in updating our integrated view in the coming weeks. It's all too evident that both governments share challenges on cost of living and the not unrelated issue of energy prices and connections between our energy markets. But we should also note the huge opportunities that arise from our closely interconnected economies, a trading relationship worth over €1 billion every week of the year. Both governments are committed to developing all parts of our economy, both geographically and functionally, investing in regions outside our capitals, taking forward opportunity across our countries, creating opportunities across different sectors. So whether it's through the British government aiming to help create 5,000 new cyber jobs in Northern Ireland, or our desire to invest alongside Belfast Region City partners up to £500 million through the Belfast Region City deal, we are committed to playing our part in securing a strong and prosperous Northern Ireland. We see great synergies between the British government's levelling up agenda and the Irish government's ambitions, including in the shared Ireland context, which the Taoiseach has set out again today. As the Irish National Development Plan for 2021 through to 2030 and this week's budget here in Ireland demonstrates, there will be significant investment going on in Ireland, as in the UK, in housing, climate, transport, healthcare, and supporting jobs and growth across all our regions. The plan also outlines the Irish government's ambition to work with the Northern Ireland Executive and the British government to, and I quote, identify opportunities for coordinated investments that deliver on shared objectives to the benefit of these islands, unquote. So we look forward to discussing together how this shared ambition can be realised to improve our shared connectivity, sustainability and prosperity. As I mentioned, trade in goods and services between the two countries totalled £67 billion in the last financial year, more than £1 billion every week. In technology, our collaboration and sharing of information and best practice continues to grow. Just last year, Ireland's HSC and the UK's Department for International Trade announced a collaboration to accelerate digital innovation to bring mutual benefits to both health systems, a very important agenda after the COVID crisis. And as we recover together from COVID, I feel this very personally, this cooperation will be immensely important. Together, we understand the need to tap into our shared natural resources as we move away from fossil fuels towards renewables, especially offshore wind. The UK and Ireland both have ambitious climate plans. We both want to be carbon neutral by 2050 and to invest in our green economies. Both the UK and Ireland are stepping up their commitments to clean energy. Only last week I was at the National ploughing championships, which is an extraordinary political, cultural, economic experience. And while often the discussion about agriculture and climate change and transition can be a rather negative one, I think that not need be the case. With the similarities in agricultural practices in the UK and Ireland and the economic and cultural significance of the sector to both countries, I think there's enormous potential to work together as we each take steps to meet our net zero targets. So at the Ploughing Championships last week, I saw the synergies between the UK and Irish governments and their commitment and support to sustainable agriculture. In April this year, the Embassy partnered with the Bioeconomy Science Foundation Ireland Research Centre, bit of a mouthful, on a report highlighting examples of research and the potential for new collaboration and innovation in sustainable agriculture as between the UK and Ireland. And in March, when the then Prince of Wales visited Ireland, he saw sustainable agricultural practices and innovation in action, visiting with Teagasc, the Irish Agriculture Ministry Research Agency, a farm in County Tipperary, which was part of their signpost programme of innovation and development. On all of this and more, there is much to be done, but together, through our shared practices and research, we can make great progress. And our work together on a bilateral level goes far beyond the areas described thus far. Another important shared benefit which we cherish is the common travel area, which allows for British and Irish citizens to move freely and reside in either jurisdiction and enjoy associated rights and privileges. We shouldn't underestimate the benefits of a student in Ireland being able to live and study in the UK, or a Brit residing in Ireland having access to healthcare. But the CTA is much more than that, of course. Given the CTA shared border and various critical infrastructure interdependencies, Ireland and the UK are important partners from a security perspective, with excellent policy and operational exchanges and cooperation, which often, without people knowing it, keeps us safe from shared threats literally every day. And it's the interconnectedness of these islands and of our ability to travel freely between them that also carries security risks, which can be exploited by hostile actors. And it's to address those security dependencies and to ensure control of our borders that we're introducing our electronic travel authorization scheme from next year. This will involve a requirement for non-visa nationals travelling to the UK to obtain online travel authorization before travelling, like the USS scheme and a similar one that the EU itself is introducing. Now, not least for this audience, I want to stress that the British government has carefully listened to the concerns about any potential impact on cross-border travel, and the UK and Ireland have agreed to explore whether there is scope for a bespoke data-sharing solution to exempt third-country nationals resident in Ireland from the ETA requirement. Whatever the outcome of that effort, which I hope will be positive, I want to stress that there won't be any checks on the border between Ireland and Northern Ireland. ETAs will not apply to British or Irish nationals, nor will they apply to people with an existing resident status in the UK, such as EU nationals resident in Ireland who have obtained a frontier worker permit. We want to make the system as streamlined as possible, but it is an important consequence of our leaving the single market, and it will be done in a way that respects our Good Friday Agreement commitments. All these areas highlight the vast amount of cooperation, connections and closeness between our countries. But what is most important to the intertwined nature of our societies is not our respective governments or other institutions, it's the people and the personal connections we have between the islands and within the islands. What struck me most in my travels around Ireland over the past couple of years, or in practice over the last 6 months since the end of the lockdown, are the extensive links between people of Britain and Ireland in every region. Almost every person I've met here has some connection to the UK, family links, work, sport, culture. I think few countries have people so connected with so much in common. Just over 10 years ago today, when London hosted the 2012 Olympics, Ireland was the only country outside the UK which was visited by the torch. And I think that displays the deep and special ties between our two countries, not least in the world of sport. Our countries are seeking jointly to host the Euro 2028 Football Championship in an unprecedented partnership of 5 football associations. I'm only sad that my posting will have ended before the football begins. But to turn back again to Her late Majesty, a long-term patron of the English Football Association, amongst many other things, she noted back in that celebrated speech in Dublin Castle in 2011 that, quote, "the ties of family, friendship and affection are our most precious resource. They are the lifeblood of the partnership across these islands, a golden thread that runs through all our joint successes so far and all we will go on to achieve, end of quote. And that golden thread, I think, is what continues to bind us, whether it be through our peoples enjoying each other's culture, our joint love of horse racing, or indeed benefiting from the common travel area. We will always be the nearest of neighbours, and I hope the firmest of friends. As Her late Majesty noted, whatever life throws at us, our individual responses will be all the stronger for working together and sharing the load. I hope, therefore, in conclusion, that we can harness her wisdom, as well as that of Lord Trimble and John Hume, to reflect on the past with pride, but without complacency, and to work towards achieving so much in the next 25 years with renewed hope and determination. Anthony, thank you very much.
So now we hope to enjoy an Ambassador live for the questions and answers. Ambassador Johnston, you're very welcome. We've just heard your pre-recorded presentation, and that came through loud and clear. So, so thank you very much for doing that, particularly in circumstances where you had other things on your mind, no doubt, in terms of. So, hope you keep well on a personal level. So thank you for joining us. So, my name is John Doyle. I'm Vice President for Research in Dublin City University and a member of the Centre for Cross-Border Studies Board. So, I'm going to moderate questions and answers. So, if audio is not coming through clear to you, just signal to me and I can repeat a question for you. So at this stage now, we have a microphone which will help the ambassador to hear if you wait until the microphone gets to you. So who wants to go first? Over. I mean, for the ambassador's benefit, given you can't see people, if they could introduce themselves.
Thank you, Ambassador. Andy Pollock, the former director of the Centre for Cross-Border Studies. I know you didn't want to go into the protocol, but can I ask you one question about the protocol? How does one reconcile the arguments of those British and Unionist politicians who say the protocol undermines the Good Friday Agreement with the arguments of most people on this island who believe the protocol is necessary precisely to sustain the Good Friday Agreement?
So thank you, Andy. I think our answer would be that for the British government's position, we do not want to replace the protocol, we want to change the protocol, make it work better. We accept that, in fact, we acknowledge very much that one of the key objectives of the protocol was to reinforce the Good Friday Agreement, particularly that balance between east-west and north-south dimensions, in which that connectivity between Great Britain and Northern Ireland is very important, as well as the obvious connectivity between Northern Ireland and Ireland itself. In our view, the connectivity between Great Britain and Northern Ireland is not working well at the moment. There's too much in the way of checks and bureaucracy. I think both sides agree that that needs to be reduced and simplified, and we hope we can get into a negotiation to that effect and therefore get a revised approach to the protocol which would be more faithful to the inherent balance of the Good Friday Agreement.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Over here, on this side.
I'm Ruth Tyon, the other former director of the Centre for Cross-Border Studies. Taoiseach was talking this morning very much about the Shared Island Fund. And we know that there's a Peace Plus programme coming in. But we also then did hear from a colleague from Wales who was talking about the importance of those East-West relationships, and certainly the East-West relationships with Scotland as well, which I know the Centre has been working on for quite a number of years now. Would there be any scope or expectation that the Shared Prosperity Fund or something along that lines, or even a bit of the levelling up agenda, could be applied to allowing civil society organisations or businesses, in fact, to cooperate on an East-West basis because we're going to lose a lot with, for instance, the Wales-Ireland Interreg program and other programs like that. So we know that Peace Plus isn't going to totally compensate for what's going to be lost, but it would be important, I think, to have some support from the UK side to actually make some of those relationships develop and stabilise.
Well, thank you very much, Ruth. I think I'm not an expert in the detail, but I think one of the reasons that the government, or both governments, are very keen to get the Stormont institutions up and running again is that because we have a lot of money that we would like to be able to plough into Northern Ireland, obviously through direct British government activity, but also through the Northern Ireland Executive. And I think those relationships between different parts of Great Britain and Northern Ireland are really important. Civil society, I think, is a crucial part of that. So, in general, I think strong support for the idea that we get as much coordinated activity in the sense of the shared dialogue agenda and where we have to support creating the dynamic forward-looking Northern Ireland we all want to see.
Just here in a minute.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'm John Curtis from the House Commons Library. Two quick questions. Firstly, could you confirm who is leading on the protocol negotiations now in government? When Liz Truss became Foreign Secretary, she became chair of the Joint Committee. Is the FCDO still the lead department on protocol negotiations? Doesn't look like it's been updated. Secondly, there's been some calls, both in Northern Ireland and across these islands, about updating the Belfast Agreement. Is there anything you'd like to comment upon that, or how do you see, maybe an easier question, what the UK and Ireland can do maybe to commemorate and build upon the 25th anniversary that's coming up?
Thank you very much, John. On the first point, the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, will be the lead for the British government in the negotiation that we want to see on the Northern Ireland Protocol. He's talking to Vice President Shevkovich tomorrow. The Northern Ireland Protocol Task Force remains in the Foreign Office. Clearly, the Prime Minister, having played that role as Foreign Secretary, will have a strong interest. She's discussed it with Taoiseach, with President von der Leyen and others, but the Foreign Secretary will be the principal UK government negotiator, supported by the team across Whitehall, but particularly in the Foreign Office. On your second question, it's clearly something that we're looking at with the Irish government and others, how to mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement next September. I think there have obviously been proposals that have come out from the Alliance Party and others about possible updating of the agreement, changes to the agreement. I think the focus of the two governments very much at the moment, as the Minister said yesterday in their press conference, is about taking an initial step of getting the Assembly and the Executive functioning again. We don't think it's the time to be looking beyond that immediate horizon. I don't think that will be able to continue. I think our focus at the moment is getting those critical institutions at the heart of the agreements up and running again.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador. Just here.
Hello, Ambassador. It's Helen Johnston here, ex-chairperson of the Centre for Cross-Border Studies. I think we're all asking a question today. One of the themes that's been running throughout is the importance of building relationships and trust, and indeed you've referenced that yourself in your input today. But as we're all aware, there's been a lot of changes in UK government personnel. And I suppose I'd just like to hear your ideas on how those relationships can be rebuilt with a view to rebuilding some of that trust.
Well, thank you, Helen. I think having active relationships between the two governments is really important. Only today, my new counterpart in London, Martin Fraser, has been in to see the Permanent Secretary in the Foreign Office and the Minister for Europe in the Foreign Office. Chris Heaton-Harris, the Northern Ireland Secretary, I think now spoke to Admiral Med Simon Coveney several times. There are plans for Foreign Secretary to meet Simon Coveney. The Prime Minister has met or talked to the Taoiseach, I think, 3 times in our first couple of weeks in office. There's official level contact obviously happening all the time. So I think those relationships are things that we need to nurture and sustain. There has been a number of changes in our ministerial lineup, of course, with the new government coming in the last few weeks. So we're absolutely committed functional, and to have that confidence and connectivity that's really important to acknowledging we will have differences on different issues, but the fact of being able to openly work together and have those board-bearing conversations, I think is very important.
Hello, Paul. This is Anthony, another director of the Centre for Cross-Border Studies, the current director of the Centre for Cross-Border Studies, although by tomorrow afternoon, I don't know if I'll last, but in terms of exhaustion, obviously, I'm going to ask you, well, it's actually to make a plea, and this is one that you will have heard as we did the pre-record yesterday, but I think it is really important. You mentioned the common travel area, and you mentioned the common travel area in terms of what it facilitates in terms of the ability of British and Irish citizens to move between jurisdictions, to work between jurisdictions and associated rights. But he also mentioned the introduction of the electronic travel authorization scheme, and you also referenced the work that is being done between the two governments in terms of ensuring that non-visa nationals who are resident in the Republic of Ireland will not be required to have an electronic travel authorization in order to enter into Northern Ireland. That is vitally important for those many thousands of citizens that live on this island that just so happen not to be British or Irish, that may continue to live their cross-border lives. Many of them cross the border daily for a variety of reasons. So this is actually a plea, a strong plea, that the two governments do work to ensure that electronic travel authorization won't be something that is required for those who are resident in the Republic of Ireland who just so happen not to be British or Irish citizens, because it is vital for cross-border mobility and cross-border relations on the island of Ireland. And so I suppose just as a tag-on question, how close do you think we are to resolving that issue? And just quickly after that tag-on question, obviously that is not going to resolve issues arising in terms of cross-border tourism, because that will still be a requirement for those arriving into the Republic of Ireland wishing to travel into Northern Ireland to visit the Giant's Causeway or go to Belfast, that they will still be required. But in terms of that, residents of Ireland, how close are we to the two governments resolving that particular issue? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Anthony. Apologies again for not being with you in person, but it was very cautious that we recorded the talk yesterday. On your question, I think the answer is that the dialogue started under the previous government at our end, at the request of the Irish government. It's continuing. I don't know exactly where it stands at the moment. We would like to reach a solution if we can. It's obviously compatible with the fact that there's nothing left the single market and everything that flows from that. But we do recognise the particular cross-border dimension, and we'd like to reach a bespoke solution if we can. So work is ongoing, and we hope it will come to a successful conclusion.
Ambassador, if I could abuse my position as moderator and ask you, you mentioned the legacy legislation, and while it's probably different, certainly you're getting different technical advice, and different industries on the protocol have different points of view, a lot of criticism, but not of one voice. But I think you would probably find it difficult to fill any decent-sized room with people on the island of Ireland, north or south, who support the current proposals on legacy. Across the political divide, there's been a lot of criticism, more than some voices. I mean, almost politically unanimous criticism of the current legislation. Is there any sense that there's any fundamental rethink of that in response to the really, very widespread view that this is not the best way forward?
So I think ministers and officials in the Royal Land Office have engaged with civil society, engaged with political parties and others, and they continue to do so. It came up yesterday in the discussion between the Secretary of State and Simon McCovey. We remain open, as I said in the speech, to try and find a way forward that has greater support for greater convergence in the proposals that are attracted so far. But the government has a manifesto commitment and has already evolved the legislation quite a bit from what it that's really as far as I can comment on it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're coming towards the end of the time the Ambassador has to give us, so okay, that's it. Ambassador, can I again, on behalf of the Centre for Cross-Border Studies, thank you initially for your agreement to speak at today's conference, and in particular, if I can double up on that, thank you for doing it in the circumstances in which you found yourself. And we really do appreciate when you had every excuse not to follow through, that you chose to make the time to do it and to take questions in this format. So thank you very much.